Hello! What another beautiful day. 2 days in a row. It's amazing. Thanks for being here. We've been talking about reality a lot. I mean, there's this brother about reality. Now we're talking about JR reality. Everyone is asking themselves, what is reality? It's a philosophical question. I don't know if you want to stay with me here for a minute. But it's interesting to think about like what it is. I mean, it's the state of what things are. And I believe that the son that I'm about to get in a few months will have a totally different perception of reality than the one we have today, given everything we've seen since yesterday. And I'm extremely hopeful about one thing. I feel that there is a sense of purpose here that everybody share, and there's some kind of a mission that whatever we do, we're trying to make it for good and for enhancing reality for humans versus doing stuff that are not good for us. And we've seen amazing examples of how it could go wrong. There's one thing that I'm sure is that art is one thing that connects us together more than anything. I mean, if you think about back in the days when we were like cavemen and we were like doing art, that was the first thing we were doing. When we were kids, before we even speak or walk, this is the first thing we're doing, arts and craft. So it's a real way to connect us, to see things differently. So that's why I'm extremely excited today to be speaking about art and how art and technology can do something amazing, and specifically get art to as many people as possible through augmented reality, so that it goes beyond the boundaries of a museum or a gallery. So a few words about Superblue. Superblue is this company that has been created like 2 years ago, and the goal of this company is to promote artists that have experiences bigger than life and art pieces that are amazingly extraordinary. It's too much, but that are amazing. So if you have been in San Francisco in the last 2 days, you've probably seen on the Embarcadero the Bay Bridge. The Bay Bridge at night has nothing to fear about the Eiffel Tower at night. It's beautiful, it's enlightened, and it's done by one of our artists, Leo Villarreal. If you've been to Burning Man 2 years ago, you've probably seen the drones flying like a flock of birds in the middle of the desert. These art pieces are all art experiences that cannot stand in a gallery or a museum. So that's the purpose of Superblue, just to push the boundaries of what's feasible and possible for these artists and getting them the maximum audience that we can. We have a venue in Miami. We're acting with temporary activation in MoMA, in the Shed in New York. We've done a lot of stuff in London, and there are more to come, starting with Atlanta. We represent 25 artists. Some of them you may know. I told about Leo Villarreal. Team Lab is this collective group of artists that is amazing, based in Japan, and they put this amazing piece in Miami where you're like literally in the clouds. We represent Studio Drift, and they're flying big blocks of concrete, defying gravity. James Turrell, who's the magician of light, and many others. And all of these artists would love to be touching as much people as possible. And again, the laws of physics doesn't allow that. So when you think about like how art used to be everywhere, when you think about street art, there's a way now, thanks to the technology, and we've seen it since 2 days, to put this art in front of as many people as possible. And the only thing that they need is a phone. And in our case, the Superblue app. So what better artist than JR, whose ethos is all about connecting people through art, whose work is really about like getting people into the art versus like for the 1%, and giving them a chance to advocate for what they care about, for what is meaningful for them, whether it's about like something in their neighborhood that they want to fight for. Like, for example, we've seen all in San Francisco and many other cities during the pandemic, one of the good things is like cities started to have like streets that became slow streets, and now there are no cars there. There's only like families, people playing together, and you have a feeling of a little village in the middle of a big city. And so JR is helping this kind of thing in some way with a project called Inside Out that was super inspiring for us. And Inside Out is inspiring for us because it's exactly about the ethos of what Superblue is. It's created by artists, completed by you. We've been talking of the metaverse and the real verse. One big difference of those two is that as of today, the metaverse has way more tools for people to be participants and to play with it and to be part of it. AR has yet to have more people to be part of it. Not only enjoying it and having amazing experiences, but I think they should be part of it. They should use this playbox, this sandbox, as a way to be participant to it. And that's what we were so happy to be able to do with the help of Niantic and JR. But let's see a video of what it means and how potentially we can build the foundation of the biggest art project in the world.
Recently, I've been thinking of a way to involve much more people to share their stories across the planet. And to do this without having to use paper and glue. Reality. It's a network of living murals around the globe.
And the local animal rescue.
Accepted for who they are.
AR murals that take on a new life when you share your stories. Just think of it like a worldwide canvas that connects people and ideas.
I love the colors.
All you need to experience reality is a phone and a Superblue app. So I'll see you out there.
So we're so excited it's live. Some of you have tested it. I think we have a lot of interesting stories. I was very touched yesterday to see a story from Kay, who's the Chief Product Officer at Niantic, who was saying in a very emotional way, we've been waiting for this moment for so long, and this is the kind of story that we want to see. Memories of people, in places, what places mean for them. And all of a sudden, this little walk that you do on the Embarcadero next to your office in the ferry building, where you see a sea lion every day at lunch when you're lucky, and you live this story, and you feel that someone else has the same story, and another one, and then all of a sudden you share what we are, like just a family of man. So we're extremely excited to have this launched today in San Francisco in a closed beta. We hope you'll populate it with all of your stories, memories of this summit, what AR means to you, and back to my question about reality, what will matter in a couple of years and what it will be for our children. But let's go back to the origin of the project, and I'm so excited to have Jamie from JR Studio joining us to tell us a little bit more about JR and how we came up to this very cool project.
Morning, everyone. My name is Jamie. I've been working with JR for almost 10 years already. It's been a roller coaster. JR is known for these large installations that he creates all around the world. On walls, like this in Israel and Palestine. On favelas, like this installation in Rio de Janeiro. On the ground, this one I participated. We pasted overnight in New York City. Sometimes inside prison yards, like this one here in California. We went back this year to a lower facility. This is the level 4. We went to the level 3. And art really changed a lot of this inmates' lives. It's been very interesting. Or even when we don't have a wall, we'll build scaffolding and paste a little kid overlooking the border wall in Mexico and the US. And then 2011, JR was awarded the TED Prize, and he was granted a wish that, his wish was that art could change the world, so he created the Inside Out project. And then since then, in 2011, almost 500,000 people have participated from 138 countries and territories. And they participate in actions that, with themes range from human rights, celebrating places and communities, and basically celebrating and standing for what you believe. In 11 years, the Inside Out became the largest participatory art project in the world. This new project, as Mathieu said, reality, we want to enter the virtual world, and we invite people to tell and share their stories, and they can be shared in murals that, all around the city, all around in different cities in the world. And to talk about our learnings on the tech, I'll call Jen. He's from Nexus.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Jen Haugen. I'm a creative technologist at Nexus Studios, and we're working with emerging new technologies to really work with story-led content with narrative at its heart, which is why it's been amazing for us to be working with Superblue and JR Studio, and of course Niantic to be working on building JR Reality with Lightship VPS. So I'm going to talk a bit about our learnings working with Lightship VPS and more from a user experience point of view. And for all of you watching from home and all of you here today, hoping that there's going to be a lot of you really excited to get going with Lightship VPS as well, and that there's kind of useful takeaways for when you come to create these experiences yourselves. So again, touching on from what Matthew and Jamie were sort of prefacing with, a lot of what we're aiming to do with JR Reality is creating this permanent space for stories in your communities to live. In a way, Lightship VPS is a perfect sort of matchup for that in terms of getting this physical presence for stories that have this permanence there in their kind of environment. So getting stories that you can pinpoint to a location and keep in your community so people, again, can come back to those locations and creating this global network of stories. And again, with both JR's ethos and in terms of Niantic, a lot of this is encouraging people to go out and explore in their neighborhoods and really create and share with the content and stories that they can uncover from the areas that they live. So a lot of our key learnings, I think a lot of you here will be kind of glad to hear that a lot of getting up and running with VPS, with Lightship VPS, is straightforward and fairly out of the box. But what we're really going to drill in is kind of the real importance of navigation, and also in terms of some few takeaways in terms of what's a bit more unique to our user flow, in terms of keeping your AR session running and placement. So I'll go over these right now. So in terms of placing content, a lot of this is I think you'll find yourself kind of in two categories, whether you're working with all available VPS locations, or whether you're creating a trail or something specific to very key points where you're tailoring content specifically to geometry and you're working with a very small set of points. Obviously, for our outreach and being able to leave stories behind in as wide an area as possible, we've been tailoring this to use all available VPS locations. So the way we've kind of been able to do this, one of them is being able to get the location image from Niantic in terms of where users are looking, because it's extremely important to get people guided to the right locations as sort of easily and straightforward as we can, like this image here of the Bay Bridge model pulled down from Niantic. So having a lot of these Niantic locations that are kind of landmarks and places with kind of content in their surroundings that we can see a bit more easily where the user is kind of guided from, that's where we get the kind of most guidance for the user. So the way we're doing it in terms of content placement is when in JR Reality we have our living murals formed of people's stories, but the first one in the location is formed and placed by the first person to visit the mural. So we're giving a little bit of freedom in terms of that first placement in order to put a little bit of placement controls and put that living mural exactly where it should be sitting in your community. So another thing that we'd love to drill in a bit more now is in terms of navigation. Like I said previously, in terms of making that location as easy to find as possible is key when we've got people putting their time into going out and exploring these places, getting them as straightforward as possible to each spot. And here we've got map navigation and AR wayfinding doing a lot of the heavy lifting. So wayfinding from your location from A to B, we're using map boxes and wayfinding models here to be able to create and plot a route from A to B so that we can easily guide people to those exact locations, so that we're making that quite straightforward in terms of what walking path you can go to and surfacing the minutes that would take to reach the location, as well as the sort of overall distance as well. And one key thing for us has been definitely surfacing that location image as often as possible. We want to make sure that people do, from the start of their journey, before they're entering AR, obviously AR being a big battery drain, we want to make sure that people, outside of AR is able to navigate to the location as easy as possible. As well as when you're entering AR, resurfacing that image and making sure that the user knows exactly what spot to get to in terms of starting that location, localizing process. One thing we found especially helpful as well is adding wayfinding arrows. So we're putting them in world space rather than screen space and really getting people to look in the right direction so that when people have placed content, we know that whether you're sort of standing to the side of it, if people have slightly moved it from the actual central spot of the VPS, it's very easy to then locate back to the content by having the world space arrows pointing you in the right direction. And one thing that we also find extremely helpful for user guidance is including a little bit of haptic feedback and a display message when localization is successful so that we know that the user is they're about to see content and we know how it's going to be sort of launched. And likewise, a lot of the time with Lightship VPS, you'll find that localizing is very quick and straightforward, but at the same time, we want to make sure that if localization is not sort of immediately triggering, we also surface a lot of helpful hints to the user in terms of how we can best get people to localize as well as possible when that's not the case. So whether that's making sure that, or reminding them of the appropriate lighting conditions, standing a set distance away from the object, and several hints to just smooth along that process. And one last thing as well, if localization, for what reason, whether it is lighting conditions or whether the mesh, whether that scan has drastically changed from the time it was scanned and localization is not possible, we offer a fallback route. So what we're doing with JR Reality is that if you're not able to localize, or if you're in areas where there is not yet any active VPS support, we offer a fallback route where you can place a solo story and send it off into the sky to be able to get that little bit of an experience of what a mural would be like and be able to share that with your friends. So being able to have a fallback, I think for all of you creating and working with VPS experiences, having that way that a user who's put the time into traveling to a location still get a meaningful experience if they, for whatever reason, should not be able to localize. One thing that's a little bit more unique to our use case is that we obviously find it extremely valuable that people are able to see and engage with the living murals before you create your own story. We want people to see and hear the stories that have been left behind before you begin leaving this behind yourself. And one thing that we do is once that mural has appeared, we encourage you to leave behind a story where we then, since we're using the front-facing camera to take a picture, we're actually pausing the AR session while that's being done. So we're relocalizing in the background, which is a bit unique to our flow. And it's something that if you do go ahead this way, it's definitely possible. And you would want to make sure that you're sort of relocalizing to the same map ID. But it's definitely something that's possible, but a lot less straightforward out of the box than our sort of flow for doing this. But we found that extremely important to be able to showcase the mural itself and then going into the flow of having people add their stories. So finally, thanks so much to everyone here who's been able to try the demo over the last couple of days. And now for just a few words from JR on this as well.
Remember, you're in the street. So don't hesitate to share something of yourself, knowing that someone will pass by in an hour, in a day, in a week, and will hear your story and might get inspired to share and connect with you.
Cool. So this is not a demo, this is real. So you can download the app. It's on Superblue. We can't wait to see your stories, whether it's like anywhere in the city now. We have, I think, more than 1,000 locations alive. And it's going to grow. It's going to be in beta in San Francisco, and then it's going to be in New York, London, Paris. We need your help just to test it, to give us your feedback, and to start to populate the city with whatever memories and thoughts that you have. And because we love reality so much, as you saw, it's like there's a kind of a silver line here. There's a way in the app that you can print your portraits. And so it's embedded in the app, it's live, and you can, the thing that is fun is that it comes in two options. One, when you're like very handsome, like Jamie, you can print your portrait. You can do a little bit of work after that on Photoshop, but like it looks good. And then there's a QR code that shows you where the story is, and so then you can see it, with your app, and you can see where you left that memories. The other option is to have the mural, and so that you have all the fellows. So imagine like baby showers, or like I don't know, there's something around it, like birthdays, or like moments at a soccer game and everything. You can have this memory, and you can print it in app, and you receive it. So we look forward to seeing you on JR Reality, and thank you so much for your attention.